My name's Oren Prunken, and I just want to get a show of hands here who already marks, assesses, gives feedback, etc. on any assignment. Primary? No, not using AI, just in general. Primary, secondary, tertiary? Okay, fantastic. This presentation is how to automate your feedback. So the people that just put their hands up. 60 times faster, I'll get into the math in a moment. Using large language models without having to physically read any of your assignments and without having to use a standard feedback bank at all. That's my big promise to you in 15 minutes. Actually, it only goes for 10 because I didn't know it was going to be 15, but that's my big promise to you. 1992, I started computer programming. There on the left, do you remember what that ancient device is, floppy disk? It's my very first program that I ever created. A year later, I won second prize in the Oliphant Science Awards. Does anyone remember that for computing? So I've been around computers and code for a really long time. You probably can guess how old I am based on that. Talking 1992. Over the last 30 years, I've built a ton of web-based software all the way from the 1990s. Does everyone remember this color scheme? Up until now. So I've been doing this for a really long time. I've also been in business selling stuff for a really long time. This is me, mid-90s, selling trading cards to men 4 times my age. I'm going somewhere with all of these anecdotes. I then, 2007, did a law degree at Flinders Uni, graduated barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court just across the road. And then I was getting involved in tech startups. Startup Weekend, has anyone heard of that brand? 2012, brought Startup Weekend to Adelaide, so merging technology and computer software together to launch tech startups. 2016, I was then invited back. I had a law degree. Flinders University invited me back to teach a topic called regulating small business and law. And then I did a topic on regulating technology. And one of those modules was regulating artificial intelligence, 2016. I can't do the math, 8 years, something like that ago. Then a few years later, I started building on top of Google Home. Everyone knows Hey Google. Am I going to set that off? As opposed to Hey Alexa. I started building chatbots, AI chatbots on top of Google Home well before chatbots were cool as they're getting traction now. 18 months ago, OpenAI released their API, and I'm going to tell you exactly what that is a little bit later. 18 months ago, I know you're looking a bit confused, we'll cover it in a moment. Released their API, got access on day one. I thought, how can I bring all of that experience up until this point that I've just spoken to you about and bring it to have the opportunity to start using it. I had just finished marking assignments for Flinders University for many of Bert's topics in innovation. And for most people that are doing assessments and marking and grading and giving feedback, it's not your favorite task when you are an educator, right? There's a few heads that are nodding. So what I did was created a web app using the API. I'll come back and talk about what that is in a moment. All you have to do is put your grading rubric in, put a prompt, and if you stay to the end, I'll give you what the prompt is, and then you upload your entire students' assignments into this software. You wait a little bit, and then it churns out a very accurate, detailed, non-biased, there's no point taking a photo of that, I'll give you some stuff in a minute, tailored feedback for that student, including a grade. The rest of my presentation is going to go through these 3 things. To get you to that point, I'm going to talk about how you can use an assisted way of grading your assignments using ChatGPT and some custom prompting. That's the first thing I'm going to go through. The second thing I'm going to go through is how can you automate it, not get assisted, but automate that using large language models and APIs. We'll cover it in a moment. And then finally, we're going to talk about ethics. I know we've covered that a lot, but it'd be remiss of me not to cover the ethics of doing this in your day-to-day job. The very first question is, okay, that sounds great. You built this thing 12 months ago. How will this work specifically for you? And all the hands that went up, I'm going to address that question for you. Normally universities, they give you 15 on the lower end, maybe 30 minutes to go and assess an assignment. What does that include? You actually have to go read the assignment, then you've got to formulate your thoughts, then you've got to give feedback on that, then you've got to write that up, then you've got to proofread that, and then you've got to upload that in 15 to 30 minutes. Most people just end up using generic feedback banks where they're copying and pasting. That's not very tailored and it's very generic. Without going into the details of how large language models work, Bruno was talking earlier around being predictive models. So whatever you put into it, it predicts what that next word or sentence or groups of words are going to talk about. And then when on the output side, it's going to do the same thing. What is the next predicted thing that is going to come out of these models based on percentages? So I'm going to talk about this percentage in a moment, addressing, I think it was Bruno that was talking about large language models being inaccurate, particularly ChatGPT. So to assist you in marking and grading and giving feedback on assignments, go to chat.openai.com. Then you're going to copy and paste several things in there. You're going to copy and paste the rubric. You're going to copy and paste the prompt I'll give you later on. And then you're going to copy and paste an individual student's assignment into that. ChatGPT won't get that wrong because what you have done is given them a precise instruction. It's not going through its large language model training data. The technical term for this is RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. So there is no hallucinations. It will not get what you put in there incorrect. Whatever it spits out will be purely correct based on what you've put in there. So you copy and paste those three things in, you hit enter, you wait for ChatGPT to pop out a response. You then copy that text out, and depending on how much time you've got, you can do a random check every 5 to 10 essays to make sure that there are no factual errors and it is in your quote-unquote voice, and then you can upload it into the student feedback software. I'd highly recommend you probably read all of the feedback that's put out. That will give you a fair understanding of exactly how your students are doing, even though you didn't physically have to read that paper. It will give you a very good understanding of what students are excelling and which ones are not. It's going to be tailored far more than your feedback banks. It will give you consistent feedback because you're putting the same prompts, the same rubrics in, and the same assignments out. So it's going to be far more consistent, and there's going to be no hallucinations because you've given it parameters to work within. I'll answer your question in a moment. It's objective because of the context windows that I just mentioned, and also there's no bias because you're not taking into consideration the interactions you've had with that student up until this point. That's then going to either positively or negatively bias how you're going to grade that assignment. It's only going purely on the information that you have you've put in. It's 20 times faster. I won't go through the calculations because I'm going to run out of time. That assisted approach, I'll make sure that slides are available if you want them and you come talk to me afterwards. That assisted approach still takes time. You have to grab the rubric, you have to grab the prompt, you have to grab the student's assignment, and you've still got to paste it in, wait, and then paste it all back out. If only there was a more automated way. There is. So how do I use this automated approach? There's a thing called APIs. An API is an application programming interface in very simple terms that allows one software system to talk to another software system. When you're using ChatGPT, you actually have to go through a user interface, so you manually have to go and use the interface. With an API, you can have them talk together and do things programmatically. So what that allows you to do is, if you use something like what I've done, is you only upload the prompt once and you only upload the rubric once. You take your entire student assignment submissions and you upload that in a batch with the first names of the students, and then you hit enter. Because you've got 30 or 40 things that need to happen for those students, it's going to take a little bit longer than ChatGPT to get those outputs. But you will get an output and you can download the entire feedback output. Again, I suggest you do random checks or read every single one so you exactly know what's happening with each of your students. And then whatever your university or educational institution is or uses for giving that feedback to other students, you're going to have to put that back up in there. Either copy and paste one by one out of the CSV file, or depending on what you're using, upload the entire CSV file. That automated approach is 3 times faster than the assisted approach, and that assisted approach is 20 times faster than you just doing it alone, 15 to 30 minutes for reading assignments. Okay, but is this actually ethical to do this? I couldn't find a policy throughout my entire 1 year of doing this. If anyone knows that there's a policy out there, I know there's tons of policies for students using AI, but for teachers, I couldn't find any. So if you've got one, please come and see me afterwards, because I'd really like to, I'll come see you after. I'd like to see what this looks like. But we can all agree that ethics is subjective, right? What you think is right, I may think is wrong, and what I think is wrong, you may think is right. Are people talking about, is it ethical to not have a human touch, bias, quality, privacy, consent, copyright infringement? In the limited time that I've already had, I've already covered the top three, and it could be all of those things, three things. I actually want to address the last ones: privacy, consent, and copyright infringement. Using OpenAI's API is private. Nothing is stored on my server, and if you read their privacy policy, nothing is stored on their server. As soon as you hit enter and you close that browser, everything is wiped. That then brings the next question: is it secure? My system talking to that system, can someone hack that? OpenAI has got a very robust security policy, and so does my system. For that to happen, you're probably more likely to get your bank details stolen for one of the million hacks that happen every week. It's far more secure than most other things that you're putting your information into. Is it consenting? Do students consent to this? Implicitly or explicitly, students have already consented to things like Turnitin. This is not controversial. This is nothing new. They are consenting to doing this type of stuff already, and have their data, how we go over time, and have their data stored in systems off-site from university, let alone have it stored in the university. Is their IP protected? Absolutely it is. OpenAI has been very specific in what they've said about their API. They do not train any of their models with any user input. However, if you're using ChatGPT, everything that you put in there is training their models. There's been some recent cases of litigation around books 1 and 2 that trained the original GPT systems. Those authors are now suing the parent company for that, for infringing their copyright material. This doesn't happen if you're using an API. ChatGPT, on the other hand, it's a little bit more of a grey area. And finally, this, if you don't believe anything that I've talked to you about until now, you've got all that feedback. You can use it as a starting point to get over writer's block and looking at a blank page. You can completely rewrite the feedback that it's given you, but it is a good starting point. Most important thing is you're probably going to get paid more in less time, and it's going to be far more tailored, more suited, and more accurate for your students. But the most important thing is it actually adds human value. There was another presenter here that talked about this. When we get to artificial general intelligence, where AGI knows all of the information that has ever been produced in all of humanity, the only thing that's really going to matter that's non-commoditized is your time and your effort to help students implement that. So you've got more time to free you up from the more laborious jobs to help students through your capacity as being an educator. I'll give you the prompt. If you want to use the stuff for ChatGPT, just go straight through to my email. You don't even need to write any words. It just says, "Hi, Oren," and then just hit send, tell me where you found me, and I'll send that to you via email. If you had any other questions or concerns, email me.